All is silent, frozen and watchful, waiting to drain any spark of life that arrives through its glowing gate of fire. Patient, deadly, and utterly without mercy, Thanatos proudly displays its rot and corruption for all to see. Even after death, the belly of death does unspeakable things to its victims. Thanatos, also called the Belly of Death since its primary inhabitants are undead, is the realm of Orcus, the demon lord of undeath. So, what is this place like? Well, in 1st edition, it doesn't actually have a name, it's just called the home realm of Orcus, and it is the 333rd layer of the Abyss. It also states that Orcus rules many layers of the Abyss and has conquered many prime material planes, but it only talks about this layer. The layer consists of immense mountains with narrow passageways carved into the solid stone that twist and honeycomb throughout the mountain range. Players who choose to travel by flight instead of walking these paths will encounter hordes of chasmi. They also have a cumulative 10% chance per 10 minutes of having Pazuzu appear, because Orcus pays Pazuzu to battle any creatures he finds in the sky here. Every 10 minutes spent traveling in this layer has a chance equal to the average party level, but no greater than 75%, of a random encounter. Somewhere in this complex of mountains is a deep valley that houses the Palace of Orcus. In 2nd edition, it is said to be the 113th layer of the Abyss, and it is finally given the name Thanatos. It's described as a frozen necropolis, a cold plain of ice, thin air, and black moonlit sky. It belongs to the undead as much as it does the demons. There are no forests or fields, for barely anything can live here. Mosses, mold, and fungi can grow in the warmer regions, and the scraggly tundra struggles for life, but barely anything here is edible or palatable. Undead slaves and servants are available for 1 copper per day, but most other goods you can't get here. Food costs triple the amount since so few who live here need it. In 3rd edition, it is also the 113th layer of the Abyss. It has almost the exact same description as 2nd edition, copy and pasted: a frozen tundra with thin air, a dreary moonlit sky, little to no plant life, and hordes of undead. In addition to that, 3rd edition also adds 2 unique descriptions. The moon is unusually large and changes phases every time a cloud passes over it, making time difficult to measure, and the landscape is dotted with tombstones. In 4th edition, it's once again described as a dead realm with ash-gray clouds and a black sky that never sees sunlight. Bleak mountains rise from the desolate wasteland, and strewn all over the realms are sarcophagi, tombs, and gravestones. Although the Manual of the Plains describes it as a frozen tundra, the Monster Manual says it is filled with twisted black trees and barren moors, making no reference to it being frozen or cold. In 5th edition, once again, Thanatos is described as, quote, a land of bleak mountains, barren moors, ruined cities, and forests of twisted black trees. Tombs, mausoleums, gravestones, and sarcophagi litter the landscape, end quote. It's teeming with undead hordes waiting to tear apart any living being foolish enough to come here. It makes no mention of it being a cold, frozen lair. One thing I find interesting is that it's the 333rd layer in 1st edition, while in 2nd and 3rd edition it's the 113th layer, and then 4th and 5th don't give it a number. I'm not really sure why it changed, however, keep in mind that unlike the 9 hells, these layers aren't actually physically underneath each other. The numbers have absolutely zero bearing on any sort of spatial relationship to each other or geography, and the demons who live in the Abyss don't associate numbers with the layers at all. It's purely the Order, the Fraternity of Order and Sigil discovered the layers in. So it could just be some sort of record-keeping error, or maybe 2 people thought they were the first ones to discover it, so it got assigned 2 numbers. There's plenty of ways to explain it away, and at the end of the day, the Chaotic Abyss does not care for order and numbers. Now, one thing that's harder to explain is that in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th edition, it's described as this frozen tundra, and 5th edition doesn't really specify, but it does describe Naratyr as being a cold city, so there's still that cold element. But in 1st edition, judging by the artwork, Thanatos seems to be a very traditional, hot, hellish landscape. There's even a moat of lava that you have to cross to get to Orcus's castle, whereas in these other editions, it is a frozen tundra. Special conditions. In first edition, if a character's alignment becomes chaotic evil while within the abyss, they are instantly turned into a Bodak. The only way to reverse this is through a wish spell, but a wish spell in the abyss must be granted by the nearest power able to do so, one of the demon lords. And the demon lords would rather keep the Bodak. If you capture and bring the Bodak outside the abyss, then a wish will work normally, but proper atonement, sacrifices, and quests are needed to revert them to their original alignment. Paladins changed into Bodaks may never regain their paladinhood under any circumstances. As far as I can tell, this isn't specific to Thanatos, but is present throughout all of the Abyss. However, this isn't mentioned in the Manual of the Planes, but instead only brought up in the module Throne of the Bloodstone, which revolves around the party going to Thanatos, so that's why I'm including it here. Also, later in 5th edition, it ties the lore of Bodaks to specifically Orcus, so it fits. In 2nd edition, anyone who dies here is transformed into a servant of Kia Ransely, the drow goddess of undead and vengeance who rules this layer in 2nd edition. Usually they're turned into an undead, but sometimes it could be a main Tretch or Rudderkin. The transformation takes an hour or so, and it is irreversible for petitioners. Planars and primes can have it halted by Raise Dead or a limited wish spell, and if transformation has been completed, they can have it reversed by a resurrection shape change or wish. All undead in Thanatos regenerate 1 HP per 10 minutes. More powerful undead, such as vampires, retain their faster regeneration, but they begin regenerating the same round they are wounded. The thin air of Thanatos reduces the constitution of living creatures by 2 points while they are here. In order to reverse this effect, you need a heal or a wish spell. In 3rd edition, Thanatos has the negative dominant trait, which means living mortals take 1d6 points of damage every round. If reduced to 0 HP, they die and are turned to ash. A death ward or similar spell negates this damage. Mortals who die here rise as undead, usually zombies, 1 hour after their death, and once again, a Raise Dead or limited wish spell can halt the transformation, and a resurrection shape change, miracle, or wish can reverse it if it's already been done. Undead on Thanatos receive fast healing 3. I'm not familiar with the rules of 3.5, and I couldn't find an online source that explained exactly what that meant, but I believe it means you regenerate 3 HP per round. Someone more familiar with that system could tell me in the comments if I'm wrong, though. Because of the thin air, creatures must make a DC 18 Fortitude save every hour. On a failure, they become fatigued. If they are already fatigued and they fail, they become exhausted and immediately begin suffocating. In 4th edition, like previous editions, anyone who dies here transforms into undead. However, instead of it taking an hour, it happens within moments. In 5th edition, the only condition specific to Thanatos is specific to Orcus's lair. So if a humanoid spends at least 1 hour within 1 mile of his lair, located in Naratyr, that creature must succeed a DC 23 Wisdom saving throw or descend into a madness determined by the Madness of Orcus table, which lasts until cured. If you pass, you are immune to this madness for 24 hours. This Madness of Orcus table is from Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and the adventure module Out of the Abyss. Wizards of the Coast recently released a compendium of all of the monster stat blocks they've released into one big book called Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. And in this, they actually removed tons of lore and they changed a lot of stat blocks. And some of the changes are all right, but a lot of them make the stat blocks less interesting and just like really boring, like making every spellcaster just spam overpowered cantrips. But one of the things I just noticed is that they actually removed the Madness of Orcus table, which I don't understand because that's a really cool, interesting thing that makes fighting Orcus different than fighting, you know, like an archdevil or something. But nope, they just gotta make him lamer. Okay, Wizards of the Coast rant is over, but I gotta fit one in every video. In addition to these Thanatos-specific conditions, you are also subjected to the general conditions that the entire Abyss has, and you can learn more about those in my video I did on the Abyss. In all editions except 2nd edition, Thanatos is ruled by Orcus, the Demon Lord of Undeath, also known as the Prince of the Undead or the Blood Lord. He hates the living, but he uses them. He hates the undead, but he rules over them. He isn't a god, but he kills them. Orcus is a complicated being that constantly contradicts himself. Relationships. In all editions, Orcus, Demogorgon, and Grozit hate each other and are always at war. I can't really find much information on why, other than in a 5th edition Adventures League module, it says that Orcus believes Grozit to be a self-aggrandized narcissist and that he and Demogorgon have been battling for thousands of years. The Forgotten Realms wiki says that he and Grozit both covet the title Prince of Demons that Demogorgon has, and that's why they always end up fighting. But when I skimmed the sources provided, I couldn't find a sentence explicitly stating that as the reason for their eternal war, and a lot of demons covet that title, not just those two, so I still don't understand why specifically these 3 demon lords are always at war. Description. His physical appearance hasn't changed much between the editions. He is described as 15 feet tall with a gray, grossly fat body. He is covered with goatish hair, his head and legs are goat-like, but his horns resemble that of a ram's. His arms are human, he has large bat wings, and a long, snaky tail tipped with poison. 4th edition adds that his body is covered in sores, suggesting diseased life, but his head is rotting and his eyes glow red, suggesting undeath. He is both living and undead, continuing the theme of a contradictory character. In 5th edition, he keeps the same description, but his head is even more rotted to the point that it is just a skull with barely any flesh left. History. In 1st edition, Orcus ruled Thanatos. In 2nd edition, the ruler of Thanatos is Kiaransili, the drow goddess of vengeance and the undead. Over eons of being unchallenged, Orcus lost his edge and grew careless and inattentive. Kiaransili took advantage of this weakness and killed him, took over his lair, and forbade his name from ever being spoken. She decreed that any mention of Orcus's name must be struck from each monument, slave band, and scroll. She wears a cloak of rattling bones that strikes fear in all living creatures that can hear it, save versus paralyzation at -4. In the winter, she rules from Naratyr, the city of dead, and in the summer, she rules from the Forbidden Citadel and the town of Lachrymosa. 3rd edition says that before Orcus died at the hands of Kiaransili, he had attained godhood and a sliver of his essence survived. He then rose as an undead demon, taking the name Tenebrous. Then, on the 3rd layer of Arborea, he discovered the last word, an utterance so powerful it could kill gods. As he scoured the outer plane searching for his wand, Tenebrous used the last word to slay 4 deities: Primus, the god of Modrons; Manzikorion, the Illithid god of secret knowledge; Bwim, the archomental of the para-elemental plane of Ooze; and Kamaxli, the Aztecan god of fate. Eventually, Orcus reassumed his previous name, form, and vigor, and deposed Kiaransili to once again command all of Thanatos. He now focuses his anger and hate on destroying his enemies and spreading tragedy and destruction on the material plane. Against Grozit, he simply sends wave after wave of his endless hordes of undead into his domain. Against Demogorgon, who is more powerful, Orcus has to deploy subtlety. Quote, he sends small bands of Nabasu, vampires, and Liches into the Gaping Maw and other places Demogorgon holds sway to undertake missions of precisely calibrated assassination and sabotage. End quote. Personality. Orcus is a brooding and nihilistic entity. He wishes to extinguish all life and make the entire multiverse look like his realm, a, quote, place of death and darkness forever unchanging except by his will, end quote. Life is noisy, crude, and maddening. It constantly rakes at his senses, aggravating, annoying, like nails on a chalkboard or a rat's claws on a hard floor. The universe can only know peace when the incessant hum of life is extinguished and replaced with the peace and quiet of death. Although he is the demon lord of undeath, he doesn't actually like his portfolio. He hates the undead as much as he hates life. He hates everything. He is constantly seething with revulsion and only wants personal power and to spread misery and destruction to all. First edition lets us know that gluttony is one of Orcus's great vices, and he has a large kitchen in his palace where food from all over the plains are brought in and prepared for him. I think it's strange that a guy of undeath would want to eat like normal living people foods. However, in first edition, even though he's still the demon lord of the undead, his physical description has nothing to do with being like dead or undead. He seems to be a living being, and he only became undead after being killed and reborn as Tenebris. So whether or not he still eats foods is up to you to decide. In combat, he prefers to go into melee and kill by bludgeoning foes with his wand. If fighting numerous powerful foes, he fights more carefully, summoning undead and demons while he stays back and casts Finger of Death and other spells. Origin. In 3rd edition, Orcus used to be an evil mortal who wound up in the Abyss as a main when he died. Through centuries of toiling and pure willpower, he continued evolving and promoting all the way to Baelor, eventually conquering the lair and becoming the demon lord he is today. His origin is changed in 4th edition to having always been a primordial even before the Abyss was formed, who then moved to the Abyss in search of the Shard of Pure Evil and became a demon lord that way. If you're interested in this creation story for the Abyss in 4th edition, check out my video on the Abyss. The Cult of Orcus. Orcus's greatest resource is his cult on the material plane. He probably has the most mortal worshippers than any other demon lord. His cult consists mostly of orcs, half-orcs, ogres, giants, and humans. Intelligent undead rarely serve him willingly and are usually forced to by dark pacts or domination magic. The Cult of Orcus strives to wreak great subterfuge and destruction on the material plane, committing atrocities and waging wars in his name. Orcus knows disease is a great way to spread suffering, so his followers foul wells with corpses, block sewers, and commit other acts to ensure the spread of illness. They do not view undead as holy, simply as useful tools for getting the job done. They create hordes of terrible undead and ultimately strive to become a powerful, intelligent undead such as a vampire, lich, mummy, or death knight in order to better control lesser undead. They rarely accomplish this, but consider undeath a great service to Orcus and a way to avoid punishment in the afterlife, so many are happy to even become a mindless zombie or skeleton. Although Orcus is not technically a god, he is the demon lord most often worshipped as one, and in 3rd edition, he can bestow spells to priests. However, 4th edition specifically states that Orcus can't grant divine magic because he lives in the Abyss, which I don't really understand the reasoning for that, because there are plenty of gods who live in the Abyss and grant divine magic to priests, such as Lolth. The Cult of Orcus doesn't have a unified symbol, with each cult inventing their own, but they usually involve skulls, bones, ram horns, or blasphemous runes, and they favor the colors black and blood red. Usually, members either wear skull masks with black robes and hoods, or goat-horned headdresses with silver robes. It is common for them to wield black, skull-topped scepters reminiscent of the Wand of Orcus to remind others of their lord's dread might. Orcus demands living sacrifices, and they are just as much about the blood of the victim as much as it is about their death. Once a month, religious leaders must fill a skull with blood, drink it, and then fill it again for Orcus and pour it over his idol. If they can't find a sacrifice for this, they then must use the blood of one of their own. They say that Orcus tastes the blood his worshippers drink. Cultists of Orcus see the gods as cruel and unjust, forcing mortals to suffer on their whims. Quote, in Orcus, they see the promise of release from pain without the demand of obedience, end quote. In undeath, they will be free from hunger, fear, and worry. People who have suffered the loss of a loved one are especially susceptible, seeking Orcus's intervention to return them to this world after the gods cruelly snatched them away. People wishing to become cultists of Orcus must be willing to become undead and commit to the cause. Those who have second thoughts and decline are destroyed, and their bodies are reanimated as zombies and skeletons. Members of his cult are called death priests. Each sect is led by a skull lord. When a skull lord achieves sufficient influence upon his home world, such as taking control of a savage humanoid tribe or maneuvering himself into a city's political inner circle, and is at least 15th level, Orcus sends an omen designed to woo the champion to Thanatos. While in Thanatos, skull lords are expected to conquer a wandering undead horde in the plains of hunger and lead that force on an invasion of the material plane or an abyssal lair home to one of Orcus's enemies. If they succeed, they take the title Skull King and return to their home world with the dark blessing of Orcus. Those who fail are reanimated as Liches in the city of Golmin, Thur, and Thanatos. When a Skull King dies, they do not become Manes, Dretches, or Rudderkins, but are reformed in Thanatos as true Tanari, such as Vrox or Nalfesnes. Orcus's most prized possession, and the one most famously associated with him, is the Wand of Orcus. In 1st edition, it is described as a rod of obsidian topped by a skull. It causes death or annihilation to any creature, save those of like status such as other princes or devils, saints, godlings, etc., merely by touching their flesh. Here's what the Encyclopedia Magica Volume 4 says about it. Quote, "When used by anyone other than Orcus himself, the wand has a 50% chance of annihilating any creature, except fiends, godlings, and the like, merely by touch, but subjects the user to one of the curses stated below each time this is tried. In addition, it bestows the following abilities and penalties: move at double speed, cure light wounds once a day, speak with animals, cause serious wounds, user receives 2d12 damage." So I guess what I'm confused about here is that it says it subjects the user to the curses stated below, but there aren't any curses stated below, unless it's referring to the abilities and penalties that it bestows. But if you survive the chance of annihilation by wielding the wand, then you already get all of the abilities and penalties by wielding the wand. So how would it inflict an additional one, unless it's talking about the cause serious wounds? I don't know. I didn't really understand what this text meant, but those of you who are more familiar with the wording of 1st edition magic items, maybe you can let me know what this means. In 3rd edition, it functions as a +6 unholy anarchic heavy mace. If it touches any non-outsider or outsider with less than 15 hit dice, it must succeed on a DC 25 fortitude save or be instantly slain. Anyone who touches the wand against Orcus's will must save or die as well. It gives a +5 deflection bonus to the AC of the wielder, and you get the following spells once per day cast as a 20th level caster: Abyssal Might, Bodak Birth, Call Nightmare, Clutch of Orcus, Summon Monster 7, Rack, and Wretched Blight. In 4th edition, it's once again described as a skull-topped wand made of smooth obsidian, although this time it is studded with rubies. Although it says the shaft is obsidian, the artwork from the same book clearly shows the shaft is made out of a spinal cord, so I guess the artist had some artistic license there. Legends say that the skull atop the wand once belonged to a god of virtue and chivalry who dared challenge Orcus in battle. Other legends identify it as the skull of a human hero that has been magically enlarged to its current size. I couldn't find an actual magic item write-up for this, but I did find a stat block of Orcus that has the wand in his stat block, so I'm having to extrapolate from that stat block as to what it does, and because it's just a monster stat block, it doesn't use the same wording that magic items have, so I'm not 100% sure what it does in 4th edition, but the stat block says that it deals 2d12 plus 12 damage, plus 1d12 necrotic damage, and weakens anyone hit by it. In addition, anyone who dies from the Wand of Orcus rises the next round as a Dread Wraith. In 5th edition, the wand is made of bone as hard as iron, topped with a magically enlarged skull of a human hero who was slain by Orcus. So I guess 5th edition, instead of leaving it up to your interpretation as to which story is true, it solidifies that the story of a human hero's skull being on it is the canon one. It can magically alter its size to conform to the grip of its user. Plants wither, drinks spoil, flesh rots, and vermin thrive in the wand's presence. Orcus will sometimes allow this wand to fall into someone else's hands by having it magically appear wherever he senses an opportunity to achieve some evil goal. A creature besides Orcus who attempts to attune to the wand must make a DC 17 Constitution save. On a success, they take 10d6 necrotic damage. On a fail, they die and are raised as a zombie. It has 2 minor beneficial and 1 major beneficial property, and it has 2 minor detrimental and 1 major detrimental property, although the detrimental ones are suppressed while wielded by Orcus. It acts as a +3 mace that deals an additional 2d12 necrotic damage and grants +3 to AC. It has 7 charges, and all spells it casts are DC 18. 1 charge for Animate Dead, 2 charges for Blight, 3 charges for Circle of Death and Finger of Death, 4 charges for Power Word Kill, and then 1 charge for Speak with Dead. And it regains 1d4 plus 3 charges per day. Orcus, or a follower blessed by him, can cast each spell using 2 fewer charges. So Animate Dead, Blight, and Speak with Dead would cost 0 charges and would be essentially at-will spells. Finger of Death and Circle of Death would cost 1, and then Power Word Kill would cost 2. Once per day, you can summon zombies and skeletons whose hit points total 500 or less, using average HP for each one, that lasts until the next dawn. When Orcus uses this ability, he can summon any type of undead, not just zombies and skeletons, and they last indefinitely. So in one turn, by using his action, Orcus could summon 3 Liches and 5 Shadows if he wanted. The Wand of Orcus is also a sentient, chaotic evil item with 16 intelligence, 12 wisdom, and 16 charisma. Its purpose is to satisfy Orcus's desire to slay everything in the multiverse. It is cold, cruel, nihilistic, and devoid of humor. It feigns devotion to its current wielder, and it makes grandiose promises it has no intention of fulfilling, such as vowing to help overthrow Orcus. The only way to destroy it is for the hero whose skull tops the wand to bring it to the positive energy plane. However, his soul is currently imprisoned by Orcus, so restoring him to life is not a simple task. If bathed in positive energy by anyone else, the wand explodes, but it instantly reforms in the abyss. Inhabitants. Like all abyssal layers, Thanatos is filled with many demons of all types. In 2nd edition, Babaus and Armenites made up the bulk of Keir Ransely's legions, and in 3rd edition, Orcus specifically created a demon called a Zavit to enforce his will in Orcusgate. In addition to demons, since Thanatos is the realm of the Prince of Undeath, it contains countless hordes of all types of undead. In 2nd edition, when Keir Ransely ruled, vampires served as her counselors, specters as her generals, and her legions included Babau, Driders, and Armenites. In 3rd edition, there is a cabal called the Council of Riven Ram, comprised of 6 powerful demons, mainly Baylords and Meriliths, that issue policies on Thanatos from Orcusgate. The Dustmen, a faction from Sigil, are the most powerful Sigil faction on the layer, and they make good guides. They know where to get food, water, and air, and most undead ignore any living being accompanied by a Dustman. They know they got a lock on the living, so they charge accordingly, at least 10 gold pieces a day, but usually more. In addition to everything I stated, there's 2 named NPCs that show up in multiple editions. The first is Glyphimhor, a powerful Baylor completely loyal to Orcus, serving him for many centuries and ruling over the city of Orcusgate in 1st edition. When Keir Ransely invaded, he was killed in battle and continued to exist solely as a column of light able to communicate with others but not affect the world around him. When Orcus took Thanatos back in 3rd edition, he was able to return Glyphimhor back to his original form. As of 3rd and 4th edition, he was ruling the city of Lachrymosa. Sleepless, a black-skinned Mali deus responsible for marshalling Orcus's conscripts for the Blood War. He seems to be everywhere at once, and all the inhabitants of Thanatos are afraid of him. In reality, he is 2 identical twins that pretend they are a single creature. They kill anyone who discovers their secret. Locations. So, the 1st edition module Throne of the Bloodstone lists dozens of locations in Thanatos, not to mention all the ones in the 3.5 book Fiendish Codex 1. So, I'm not going to cover every single location in detail, because this video would be 2 hours long, but I am going to talk about the locations that get covered in multiple editions, the ones that seem important to the layer, and the ones that I think are just cool. The Palace of Orcus, also known as the Castle of Orcus or the Abyssian Fortress, is the fortress where Orcus dwells and is surrounded by a city called Orcusgate. The chaotic terrain of the Abyss warps and distorts the view of the fortress. Every glance it will look different. Sometimes it's jagged and black, and then next time it might be rounded and crimson, and then other times it might appear as a collection of odd angles cast in a dirty white color. As you approach, the distance will constantly warp. It will appear 200 yards away one moment and then 10 miles away the next. The sky might flash bright red and then fade to a dull crimson glow, before a wave of sickly green washes through it. The land around it pulsates and changes colors to the beat of the winds and roiling clouds. To get inside the castle, one must go through a series of bizarre, cartoonish gauntlets, including several mazes, a section entirely of pathways and staircases where Baphomet is imprisoned, and a mile-long bridge that appears to only be 200 feet long. It can only support one character without collapsing, and it summons a mirrored version of the strongest fighter in the party for a one-on-one duel. If anyone tries to cheat by flying past these obstacles, demon air patrols will be dispatched to attack them. As long as the party remains in the air, every time a patrol is defeated, another one that was waiting will immediately come in and continue the fight. There's also bone guns mounted on the fortress that can shoot lightning bolts, magic missiles, or dispel magic, and are manned by Vrox. After you make it through the defenses, there is a large platform with an iron golem with the sole task of greeting visitors. On this platform is a library for Orcus's more literate guests to enjoy, an observation room that Orcus can scry into to see who has approached his castle, a torture chamber which Orcus can also scry into to entertain himself, a fake-out hallway that actually teleports you outside the castle so you have to do all of the mazes and gauntlets over again, and the real pathway that leads to the next area, a battle arena that looks like a chessboard where Orcus and hand-picked powerful demon allies will fight the party. This arena only comes into existence if Orcus deems the guests/intruders he scries on worthy. If Orcus thinks he is losing, he will teleport back to his throne room. After the battle arena, you finally arrive inside the castle at the Chamber of the Princely Guard, where Orcus keeps his most ornery demons to capture or kill any intruders. An alternate path that bypasses this chamber and the battle arena involves going through the kitchen where food from all over the plains are brought and prepared. Finally, you have his throne room, protected by a green dome that dispels all magic and items. Items are dispelled for 2d6 rounds on a successful save or permanently on a fail. All demons within the fortress have 75% magic resistance that doesn't scale at the caster's level. In 3rd and 4th edition, this palace is called Everlost, and it is made out of bone. Instead of being right next to Orcusgate, it is 1,300 miles away from it in a desert of bone meal called Oblivion's End. In 5th edition, it's still called Everlost, and it's still in Oblivion's End, but it's made of bone and obsidian. It's also surrounded by tombs and burial sites dug into the sheer slopes of narrow valleys, creating a necropolis. Orcusgate. In 1st edition, this was a city directly around the Palace of Orcus, and it was ruled by the Baelor Glyphimhor. Orcusgate is a chaotic tangle of streets and buildings sprawled out haphazardly. The buildings are constructed with odd angles in their architecture, and the city seems completely empty and devoid of life, except for the occasional glimpse of a shadowy figure ducking behind a building. The city feeds off the life level of living creatures, so as characters spend time in Orcusgate, it slowly draws energy from them, scaling with level. So, at level 20 and under, you would lose 1 level's worth of experience points per 6 hours, but at level 71 and up, you would lose a level every 10 minutes. If characters try to leave, Glyphimhor himself will teleport to the exit along with several other demons and do his best to prevent them from leaving. In 3rd edition, Orcusgate has a gate of fire that connects to Pazunia. It is filled with the upper echelon of the Cult of Orcus, and mortals seldom stay here long because of how inhospitable it is. But it doesn't say why it is inhospitable. Here resides the Zovits that keep law in the city, and the Council of the Riven Ram, which dictates demonic policy all across Thanatos. In 1st edition, there are 5 other cities near Orcusgate. The City of Stray Curves, where avenues and buildings appear straight, but actually everything twists around, leading you back to where you started, and it's ruled by a Lich with a bodyguard of Death Knights. The City of Stray Curves is also in 3rd edition, but it's located 500 miles away from Orcusgate, and it's described a little differently. It's a frozen-over port city on the River Styx. It still has the curving streets, but it's the work of a Nabasu named Glurisdval, who enjoys using illusions to play mind games on visitors, such as confronting people with illusory shades of fallen comrades, or attempting to convince them that they have returned to the material plane. In addition to the City of Stray Curves, in 1st edition there's also the Bucking City, where the ground is constantly bucking up and down or side to side, and it's ruled by a succubus rumored to be the queen of all succubi. The Strobe City, where the sky switches from white light to pitch darkness, ruled by a council of insane Nabasu, and the City of Fire and the City of Ice. These last two are both ruled by Baelors who are rivals of each other. And each of the 2 cities are identical, except that in one of the cities, the buildings are always aflame and the streets are made of lava. And then in the other city, the buildings are always coated in ice and the streets are made of ice. I'm sure you can guess which is which. Naratyr, the City of Dead. In 2nd edition, this is a town carved from icy river bluffs above the Styx. Its lower reaches right on the waterline, and its upper reaches are above in the airless ice of Thanatos. The City of Dead is a silent, cold city, and the constant stench of death will make your stomach churn while visiting. The lower reaches are actually the safest place to be in this layer. You see, the intelligent undead don't go here, because it's only for the mindless, unthinking undead. Lesser Tanari don't go here because they're terrified, Greater Tanari don't go here because they think they'll be transformed into undead, and the Abyssal Lords don't go here because Kia Ransely sucked the life force out of the last Lord to rule Thanatos, and they believe the lower reaches are her feeding grounds. Since everyone ignores this area, it's basically a sanctuary in Thanatos. Zombies and skeletons wander around here, and a few dustmen scour through the lower reaches, picking through the trash the intelligent undead throw down. The upper reaches of Naratyr are home to warring bands of vampires, banshees, and specters, all striving to impress Kia Ransely by converting living flesh into undead slaves for her. The militia of Naratyr is the Ivory Mace, a gang of ghouls led by ghasts or wraiths, and their captains are babaus who wield carved thigh bones as clubs, enchanted with the ability to use a death song once per day, with the same effects as a banshee's wail. While Kia Ransely rules the whole lair, the handler of day-to-day tasks in the City of Dead is Rava Cormrael, a level 28 drow priestess. The upper reaches don't have many services to offer mortals. There's a single tavern for warm folk and a few shops. There's an inn called the Bottomless Well that sells food and drink, but it's run by a man named Crimson Maul, who mutters ceaselessly to himself and obsessively cleans the mugs with a bloody rag. If you go even higher above the upper reaches lies the Winter Palace of Kia Ransely. Its carpets are woven from the hair of its former occupants, and the interior walls are made of flesh. In the summer, when Kia Ransely is away, it is ruled by Rotting Jack, a babau whose flesh is always rotting and crawling with maggots. He disregards Kia Ransely's orders and brings in Tanari, spreads the town's wealth to his cronies, raises taxes, and begins slaughtering his opponents. He hopes that one day he can convince some Abyssal Lord to back him and grant him enough power to seize the plane from the Drow Goddess. Kia Ransely knows of his treachery and is amused by it. She will punish him when he becomes dangerous, but for now she allows him some power. In 3rd edition, Naratyr is still a city carved out of a glacier, but its architecture consists of tall mausoleums, towering funeral obelisks, and crypt parapets. 3rd edition also seems to have taken the whole carpet woven from hair thing from 2nd edition, but instead of it only being in the main palace, you can find them all throughout the city, and the hair is taken from the thousands of undead that inhabit Naratyr, as opposed to the previous palace occupants. When Orcus returned and overthrew Kia Ransely, he cleansed the city of her followers and then left it alone to rot. It is now filled with undead still loyal to the goddess. 5th edition still describes it as an eerily quiet and cold fortress city, with its streets empty for hours at a time. The central castle of bone has walls of flesh and rugs woven from hair. Unique to 5th edition, it says the city is filled with undead that constantly battle each other. It doesn't state why they battle each other, but I would assume it's between undead still loyal to Kia Ransely and undead loyal to Orcus. 5th edition also states that Naratyr is where Orcus's lair is. Lachrymosa, the Cauldron of Tears, is a town that is kept warmer than the rest of the lair by rust-red geysers that spurt steam and water into the Styx, making it the most hospitable place in Thanatos. Lachrymosa is located in a dry, hilly region and is upstream the river Styx from Naratyr. 3rd and 4th editions specify that it is in the final hills near Everlost. Inhabitants of Thanatos will often lash the bodies of zombies, ghouls, wights, and other decaying undead together to form rafts that float down the Styx to Naratyr, where the undead are transformed into skeletons, wraiths, or other creatures to better serve the Tanari. In 2nd edition, when Kia Ransely lorded over the lair, the ruler of this town was a Nista of 8 Eyes, a high-strung level 12 Drider priest. She wears a crown of eyes, a magical item that gives her 360-degree vision and prevents her from being surprised. It's essentially the Cloak of Eyes from the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, but it's a crown instead of a cloak. In 3rd and 4th edition, when Orcus ruled, Lachrymosa was ruled by Glyphimhor. 3rd edition also says this serves as Orcus's capital, but he spends most of his time issuing decrees from his palace Everlost. In the center of the city is the Forbidden Citadel. This is where Kia Ransely issued decrees from her nightmare throne of zombies and skeletons in 2nd edition. Also in that edition, it is described as a citadel of festering flesh, while 3rd edition says it resembles an enormous bust of the goddess herself looking southward to her winter capital Naratyr. As of 3rd edition, Orcus hasn't destroyed the Forbidden Citadel, some say because he lacks the power to destroy an edifice of a divine being. The City of Liches. In first edition, this is a city magnificent in architecture, but deadly cold and silent, surrounded by a stone wall with a single iron gate. It is inhabited by 100 Liches, 12 Demi-Liches, and 12 Death Knights, and is ruled by the Lich King. The undead here believe themselves far superior to the demons who rule this lair, and thus would love to overthrow Orcus and conquer the lair for themselves. According to the Adventure Throne of the Bloodstone, the Hand of Vecna is located here, along with 40 to 50 miscellaneous magical items. Third edition refers to the city of Liches as Golmin Thur. It has thousands of Liches instead of 100, and the Liches are previous Skull Lords who failed Orcus and were transformed into Liches called the Disgraced. When not handling the numerous pacts Orcus has with mortals, they seek to impress the Demon Lord by attempting to command a horde of undead on the Plains of Hunger. However, the magic that created them prevents them from sabotaging mortal servants of Orcus, so in reality they end up acting as facilitators to living Skull Lords. There are plenty of other locations I don't want to spend too much time on, but I still want to mention it to give you guys ideas and because I want this to be a detailed video. So in first edition, you have the City of Zombies, a city of 10,000 zombies led by the Zombie King. They loathe their terrible half-dead existence and seek a true death to be released from this torturous hell. There's a Tarrasque lair, a mountain consisting of all the skeletons to ever be slain on the prime material plane, and then a canyon filled with demons dancing around a burning pyre. Bound to this pyre is Gabriel, a Solar of Bahamut. While he cannot be killed by the flames, he is in constant agony. In 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition, there is Oblivion's End, a desert of bone meal filled with the screams of lost incorporeal undead, where Orcus's personal fortress made of bones, Everlost, resides. In 3rd and 4th edition, there is the Plains of Hunger, a vast frost-rimed plains east of the river Styx teeming with countless hordes of wandering undead, aimlessly searching for lives to destroy. The Final Hills, dry foothills filled with undead and secrets that separate the Plains of Hunger from Orcus's personal realm of Oblivion's End. In it is a maze of canyons called the Valley of Cryptings that eventually leads to the endless maze of Baphomet. And the Frozen Sea, an endless frozen ocean where the ice extends for miles under the surface, dotted with the occasional shipwreck and citadel carved from ice. And then only in 3rd edition is Lachrymosa, a spinning helix of magical energy floating above a crumbling metropolis, and that the locals believe was the site where Orcus first enslaved Thanatos to his will thousands of years ago, and Vadrian, the former stronghold of a Baelor who betrayed Orcus, and it now serves as a stronghold for the Dustmen called the Galandur Citadel. Now, one thing that really confused me while doing all this research is, where exactly does Orcus rule from? So in 1st edition, Orcus rules from his palace, which is located in Orcusgate, a city literally named after him. That makes sense to me. In 3rd edition, it still has Orcusgate, and the Riven Ram Council issue policies across all of Thanatos from Orcusgate. However, Orcusgate isn't the capital. Lachrymosa is the capital. However, he doesn't actually do much in Lachrymosa, and he tends to stay in his palace of Everlost and issue decrees from there, probably because Lachrymosa still has a temple shaped like Curansely in it that he can't destroy. However, it still says that Lachrymosa is the capital, even though he issues decrees from Everlost and the Riven Ram Council issues decrees from Orcusgate. Then in 5th edition, according to Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, it says that Naratyr is the capital of Thanatos, and it's where Orcus's lair is. He gets lair actions while in his Castle of Bone, located in the center of Naratyr, but according to the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, Orcus rules Thanatos from Everlost again. So he has his palace in Orcusgate, his other palace called Everlost, 1,300 miles away from Orcusgate, Lachrymosa, and Naratyr all acting as his throne throughout the editions, not to mention the Riven Ram Council issuing decrees from Orcusgate. Now, I know editions retcon stuff all the time. I'm used to it. I do these videos a lot, and there's always stuff like this, but some of these inconsistencies are present even within a single edition. Now, I know that demons are supposed to be chaotic, insane, and impossible for mortals to truly understand, so maybe all of this is correct. Maybe every single one of these acts as his capital, and this is just another symptom of Orcus's madness and his contradictory, chaotic nature. Anyways, that is Thanatos, the home realm of Orcus. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know if I got anything wrong or missed something really cool that you would have liked to see mentioned. And if you guys want to see more D&D lore like this, remember to subscribe and check out my other videos.